racial terms said under the phrase banter. I have a genuine issue with this, which is sort of like a get out of jail free card that people use, which is where people say something subtly with what they actually mean, but they cushion it under this phrase banter. And
So
I don't personally. So I can't give you an example as such. All right. Okay, say when I was in school, I used to wear a bartka.
Yep.
With a bartka, I had a barge. What's that called in English?
Metal stick to tuck in your hair.
Yeah, and I use it to tuck in my hair, right? Now, with that, I used to take it out and tuck my hair in and put it back in.
Right.
One time, I took it out amongst these kids at school, and I took it out, and the kid was saying, put it back in, it's going to explode. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, the bomb underneath your head is going to explode. And I was like, okay. Cool.
Bruv.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he's like, oh, it's just banter. And then I'm thinking like, all right. But looking back on it, I was like, no, that's not funny, bro. That's just you saying something racist and trying to hide it because you feel like you can. And you think that we're on friendly terms in that way, but we're not. Now, the issue with this banter thing is that it's a massive grey area. Because somebody might feel like they're comfortable enough to say something like that to you, but you don't think you're on the same terms as that, or the same sort of, you haven't got that same sort of relationship built up. So I can, but the problem you have is when you have that happen to you from a young age, you want to fit in, so you accept shit like that said to you, in order to sort of get
not
into
be the
that
rebel
circle. Yeah, and best believe it does happen at schools. People just use it as an excuse. It's basically a cop-out to say how you really feel. So with the banter thing, I'm like, it's a real issue. And I'm sure that stuff like that happens in work cultures all the time, high up. Like, people say stuff like that about other people all the time and just say, oh, it's just a bit of banter, mate. Don't worry, Don't think too much about it. It's cool. I'm like,
Fine line.
It's not really,
Fine line, because having banter is obviously very important. It's all part of rapport, relationships. To be honest, it's what makes my work fun.
It's a part of British culture, I get it.
It's very, very important, but yes, defining banter is like a grey area. And you're right, it does depend on the relationship. Like, you and me could probably have much more severe banter, let's say.
Oh, we could lay into each other for hours, and I'll say to you at the end, Goran, I love you. And you're like, I love you too. And that's it, it's cool. Like, it's fine, there's no issues with that. But that's because I've known you for 7 years. Right, I'm allowed to say that to you. I've been on holidays with you and stuff, right? Like, that's built. Not someone I've worked with for a couple of years who can say that to me casually. See,
absolutely, absolutely
levels.
So that's it. It's casual racism, isn't it?
Yeah. But that's where it sort of seeps in a little bit, doesn't it? It's like, okay, you have to wean that out too.
But because the problem is, again, if that doesn't get challenged there, it's all right, innit? It's all right. Then you get to higher levels of proper racism,
and they push it It's like someone at work who tries to take your ideas. If they take one, they're going to keep taking them again and again until you stand up for yourself. Then when you stand up for yourself, they'll back off. And it's like, oh, okay, all it took was for me to stand up for myself to stop you from taking things too far. So yeah, it's a bit of a give and take, isn't it?
Absolutely, man.
But I have a big question for you, Karen. Do you still think you've never experienced racism to this day? So I remember the one time that on that podcast you
asked me,
you've never experienced this.
It's hands like up, man, like never.
It's mad. I still can't.
So I was gonna say, because we've had similar upbringings in terms of like schooling, that kind of thing, but I've never felt that somebody has treated me differently because I'm brown, Sikh, Punjabi. Yeah. Been around good friendships. I mean, like, the one time I remember was my neighbor in my old house, Sikh guy, his cousin, maybe 2 years younger than me, said something like, "Oh, what's that on your head? What's that dick on your head? Jula."
Yeah.
But I don't know. Is that racism? If it's coming from the person who's
similar.
It
is. I used to have that said to me in the secondary school I used to go to at my local comp. They were like, "Why does it look like you've got like a dick under your head?" And I was like, "Oh, interesting." And I used to get proper aggressive about it. And I was like, oh, they're just naive. But equally, why did you say dick? I'm like, someone must have said something like this to you in the past, like, oh, it looks like a dick on his head, right? So maybe that was shared with them and they kept that in mind. They're like, oh, yeah, you know what? It does look like a dick. So, who said that to them? Then who said that to that person? Then you've got to trace it further and further back.
Mate, that's the real track and trace right there, huh?
See what I mean? Test and trace that
Trace
NHS,
that
man.
shit.
Fucking
Yeah,
hell.
man.
Sort it out. Yeah. Get
Yeah.
on it.
But look, the other thing I will say for people listening to this podcast, guys, and I talk about this a lot, maybe not on the podcast, but offline, is this real sense of personal responsibility. Okay? And it's like when you drink a can of Coke, right? And you're like, me putting this one can of recycling is not going to save the world. If you think like that, you'll never do anything.
Yeah.
Whatever you have the means to do within your means and your environment, do it. And so what I'm saying here is to extrapolate is if you're in a situation and you have the ability to challenge someone's perception about things which are universally wrong, like hate based on color, racism, okay, then please start having an opinion, voice up, and let's squash out the minority. That's what we need to do.
It's sort of on like everybody else to make sure they sort of take
pipe
that
up, stand, good fight.
They pipe up and take that stand and really just be staunch about it and just hold your ground, man. Even if you can't back up the conversation, just challenge them on it. Like at least make
and guys, that question is, why do you think that? What experiences have you had that led you to believe this? And then just shut up, man. Even if you're just learning that. Because sometimes when people voice their stuff and like you said, they realize it's just absolute bullshit.
They can stumble on their own thoughts. Yeah.
Right? And then it's just like you're just helping them disprove their own theories, ideologies, and it doesn't have any merit. And even if that's just the first hit of many hits for them to finally discredit this way of thinking. Because people do reform. It's not that people don't reform.
No, of course they do. There's a guy who went on Rogan who said he's a black gentleman. I forgot his name. But he was going around stopping people from being in the Ku Klux Klan. And he was talking to them and convincing them to not be in the Ku Klux Klan. And over time, he was bringing them back into the normal world and stopping them being racist. And he'd done that for like a good few hundred people, I think it was now. Okay. And he's on this mission to like just essentially do it. And I was like, that's incredible. Like imagine the amount of groundwork you have to do to put someone in who's really that heavily invested into that sort of life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible.
You make that cause.
It's someone's piece of life work though to go and do that, but I guess it is possible. And it's all done through conversations. It wasn't like he just he
waterboarded
the guy or anything like that, or he waterboarded him or anything.
No, you can't think like this.
Exactly, it wasn't anything like that.